Hey guys, welcome to the first of a continuing series of
Blas explains circling.
circling is the art of being with another in their world. You could just say if meditation was the art of being, circling is the art of being with. And that sounds like super simple, but it's actually it's not. It's complex and simple at the same time. Imagine yourself as you wanted to go fly fishing. So you buy a fly fishing pole and you go down to the river and you start doing it and you're not catching anything. You're not even having a good time. The thing about it is like humans have what are called like existential qualities common to every human. Like
We're all gonna die.
And people argue we're all kind of subtly processing that at some level.
We all were born.
We're all gonna die.
Things like that play into our psychology are always bouncing around. So knowing what those are kind of like helps the being with. You know, you're not being with a rock or being with a raccoon, you're being with another human. So when we think about how to circle, it's like in that fly fishing analogy, it's like going down and then there's somebody else, like an old dude, maybe with red hair, who's like been fly fishing a lot. And it's really helps the experience of fishing if, said dude in stupid waders to the right looks at you and says,
The blue fuzzy one is the one that works on this river.
At this point, I've studied with a lot of fly fishermen, the main two being Circling Institute in Berkeley and Circling Europe in Amsterdam, but mainly in Austin because Austin is the circling capital of the world. And Circling Europe uses 5 basic principles. And as I've been kind of like coagulating all the information that I have in my head, I realized that there was a principle from Circling Institute that isn't phrased as a principle there, but Guy just says it a lot. So I've integrated those into 6 circling principles. And so today we're going to start with principle 0.
Everything makes sense.
One of the weird things about working with these principles is like you're not really supposed to believe them. You're supposed to try them because they're kind of unprovable. You have to try them to see what the existential property that everything makes sense points to is that every human has a world. So you could say, yeah, we do have a world. Planet Earth, man, we need to recycle. And I'm like, yo, you're right about that. And that's not the kind of world we're talking about. What we're talking about in circling when we say world is every human has a subjective reality. We can like knock on wood and be like, that's real. I'm like, totally. But the only reason we know that is because electricity is coming like from my knuckles through the nerves in my body to my brain, and my brain's saying, that thing's solid. So on some level, it all comes back to this subjective experience that we're having. And inside of every human's subjective experience is a kind of cohesion or sense making. So even if somebody's like, their logic's way off, or even if somebody is just like really maladapted, to them it makes sense. So like say they're suffering from abuse, it makes sense. Say their life is wonderful, it makes sense. Say their life is middling, it makes sense. Every human's world makes sense. So as circlers, we kind of have to go in already realizing that because we're used to living in the world where we've got to like haggle, argue, debate. And so circling is not those things. It can include those things, but ultimately it's just about being with the other person in their world. So one assumption you need to know when you circle is the person you're circling makes sense. Okay, in order to flesh this out, I'm going to go through what I call the bennies of everything makes sense, like the benefits. So the first one we're going to cover is easy access to empathy. So when we're debating people's worlds, we're kind of like we may be empathizing with them unconsciously, but like consciously we're kind of like fighting what empathy would be, or how empathy would occur, because we're kind of haggling with them over what's reality. So with everything makes sense, we get to the kind of like a VIP access into how it feels to be in their world. Like imagine you're circling somebody and they start psychoanalyzing themselves and say something like,
"Oh yeah, I'm like such a people pleaser."
and then you could be like,
Oh, you know, so you're noticing that you kind of are like addicted to making sure everybody in the room is like really happy.
Yeah, it's like I really just hate that about myself.
Oh, you hate that about yourself.
and then there's this way where like right there, okay, so everything makes sense. So that they are addicted to people pleasing makes sense, and that they hate it also makes sense. So you can kind of sit there and just imagine that's true before you might realize why. And then they might say,
Hey, what are you doing?
you're thinking,
Well, I'm imagining that there's probably a reasonable reason for why, you know, you've got this habit of people pleasing.
and then that might invite them to say something like,
Well, yeah, actually, when I was a little kid, my parents argued all the time, and it was like my job. It was like my job.
this is actually, I'm talking about myself right now.
It was like my job to make sure that they weren't fighting, either by, distracting them by acting out, or by like kind of counseling them or conciliating them, or like doing things to bring peace to the household.
And then it's interesting because like the hatred of that also can make sense. Like, oh, this kind of like adaptation that was for a little child pretty smart. I mean, for a child to be able to figure out that it can like create a little more safety for himself by like taking care of all these adults so that they can like finally have the resources to take care of him is like freaking genius. But from the, perspective of an adult, it's a pain in the ass, because then you're like totally mired to lots of dramatic people who, and you're kind of preventing them from learning their own, coping mechanisms. So it's like really annoying to be a people pleaser. So, you frame that back to the person.
So it makes sense. So like when you were a child, like you picked up this habit because it was like totally necessary and kind of smart for you to have to do that. And now like the echo of the habit is like ringing into your future, and it's annoying. Oh, got it. Like, okay, I can be there. So where are we?
And then just state to them, like, so we're here and you're looking at this echo inside of your being, and you know where it comes from, and it's super annoying. Let me let the cat out. See you later. And just notice how it feels to be in that place. Okay, Benny number 2, I like to call enjoying believing people. So, like, everything makes sense means that if they say something and to me it sounds like bullshit, I'm like, okay, so if everything makes sense and it sounds like bullshit, then I can own some kind of lack of sense making. So a really good example I had was I was with a bunch of circlers, and there was a guy there who was kind of new to circling, and he was doing a lot of growth work. He was trying to change. He was trying to change some quality in himself. So he was going from like point A to point B, and like, so he's kind of like A.5, he's like halfway there, and he's really like reaching for B. So anytime somebody would ask him like, what's it like to be you right now, he would say like,
I'm strong.
and then he would look like scared, and everybody was like,
Oh my God, you're scared and you're not admitting.
he's like,
I'm not scared. Rah!
and it just kind of went back and forth like that forever, because people could see, kind of like seemingly spot this part of him. But the thing is we're being with them in their world. We're not like kidnapping them into ours. Like that would be something not circling. So listening to this guy, I was kind of in the same boat. Like, I'm not buying it. But then just like watching everybody strike out made me think, oh, we're probably like not circling. So I was like, okay, so what's his stance? Like maybe like almost like take his side and just believe him. And then immediately he's like, yes, that's it right there. And this is super shallow, but like I got to enjoy being like the one that got him. You know, it was like really nice. You totally get lots of like circling street cred. So if you want to look really cool, you know, don't fight people about, you know, what the truth that they're perceiving with. You're not actually like, this isn't like a debate for gay rights. This is like his perspective on reality in a circle in like some workshop called circling. Another way that like everything makes sense, allows me to enjoy being with people, is since I'm circling and not representing a position, I can look at how they feel when they're saying it, and I can like believe that like how they feel is sincere. And it happens a lot when I'm with people and they're kind of pontificating, you know, and like sometimes it gets a little obnoxious when people just love to hear themselves talk. It's like kind of annoying and we might cringe. I don't know why. We could go make another video about that someday. But instead of resisting it and being like, oh, I hate when people do that, we can just enjoy feeling how good it feels for them to talk about maybe themselves for a little while. And that might be the first time anybody's ever just like let them be there. You know, you can just sit there and then, you know, empathize with that. Oh, so it's like you really seem to feel like joyful when you're sharing this information. What's that like? Okay, the final Benny we're going to discuss is definitely just a reiteration, but I like to call it not having to argue about reality. You know, I was standing outside this cafe one time, and this homeless person came up, and we were like, it was me and a bunch of poets. We were doing like a poetry reading, and he came up to us and he just started telling me that he was like high priest of some like Egyptian, you know, god, and he was very powerful. And this is way before circling. I was just like, oh man, it's so great to meet you, and wow, like, can we have a blessing? You know, like, how can we, you know, get closer to you, or like, thank you for gracing us with your presence. Like, if you are a high priest of, you know, Ra something or whatever. And it was funny because he just
calmed way down.
And if you think about it, like from inside his eyes, some manner of phenomena and story and maybe chemical imbalance has like made it make sense to him that he's a priest of some Egyptian god. And the thing about it is like most people are like, okay, so like you're crazy. And the thing is, it's like from inside, from the data he's got, he's not. He's interpreting it like probably pretty accurately. And there's this way where like somebody could be like,
no, sir, there's no Egyptian gods, and there's only Jesus.
Sorry, or
sorry, sir, like this is, 2014, and we don't do that here.
And the thing is right there, like you're kind of like almost like denying him his world. You're kind of calling him crazy, and at that point, like, you're just kind of cutting him off from humanity, just presuming sanity. Like, if you really think about it, the only insanity that really exists is people who think that their worldview is like perfectly in alignment with objective reality. That's what I think is crazy. So like if we're all kind of adrift on the sea of reality, and we're, some of us have like tied our flotillas of beliefs together to kind of create like a relative presumed sanity, I think it like really, really helps our fellow, higher order apes to like at least give them the benefit of the doubt that what they are seeing what the actions they're taking, the needs they're trying to fulfill, like, are sane.
Everything makes sense.